On the nuclear arms pact, we saw the president's post on that.
Yes.
But can you say, is there a temporary agreement with Russia to stand by the terms of the New START treaty while negotiations are happening?
Not to my knowledge. Again, to your point, Jennifer, I just do want to reiterate exactly what the president said. He wrote just moments ago, the United States is the most powerful country in the world. I completely rebuilt its military in my first term, including new and many refurbished nuclear weapons. I also added Space Force and now continue to rebuild our military at levels never seen before. We are even adding battleships, which are 100 times more powerful than the ones that roamed the seas during World War II. The Iowa, Missouri, Alabama, and others. I have stopped nuclear wars from breaking out across the world between Pakistan and India, Iran and Israel, and Russia and Ukraine, rather than extend New START, a badly negotiated deal by the United States, which I will add was renegotiated under former President Barack Obama, aside from everything else, is being grossly violated. The president wants to have our nuclear experts work on a new, improved, and modernized treaty that can last long into the future, and that's what the United States will continue to discuss with Russians.
Today, we're talking about a recent Senate hearing that's been drawing attention across the country. In this video, we'll walk through what happened, why it matters, and how different lawmakers approached the issues at hand. We'll break down the key moments, the arguments from both sides, and explore what ordinary Americans might take away from it. But before we dive in, if you value thoughtful analysis and honest discussion, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to 45th Perspective. If you want to support our work even further, consider joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/45th Perspective. Your support helps us make more content like this. Let's begin with a clear picture of what the Senate hearing was about. The hearing was convened to examine a significant issue facing the nation. Lawmakers gathered to question experts, government officials, and industry leaders about it, exploring aspects ranging from policy impacts to long-term consequences. The main topics included current challenges, proposed solutions, and disagreements over approaches. While the specifics can vary from hearing to hearing, the core purpose remains the same: oversight, accountability, and shaping public policy. As the session started, the chair of the committee outlined the agenda. They emphasized the urgency of the matter, citing recent developments and expressing concern about how current trends could affect communities nationwide. This opening set a tone of seriousness, signaling that the issue at hand is not abstract or distant, but something with real consequences for people's lives. What stood out immediately was the range of perspectives in the room. Senators from both parties brought their backgrounds and priorities to the discussion. Some focused on economic implications, others on social impacts, and still others on questions of fairness and constitutional authority. This diversity of focus points can sometimes make hearings feel scattered, but it also reflects the multiple ways any major issue touches different parts of society. One of the first witnesses called to the stand was an expert in the relevant field. They provided data and context, attempting to ground the conversation in facts. For example, they might have pointed out trends over time, demographic impacts, or comparisons with other countries. What's important to note here is that experts often speak in terms that can seem technical, but their testimony serves as a common reference point. Lawmakers then take that information and interpret it through their own lenses. Some senators used that testimony to support calls for stronger action. They highlighted data that, to them, showed a clear need for policy intervention. They spoke about the experiences of everyday Americans, urging solutions that could provide relief or protection. Their questions reflected a concern that without definitive steps, the problem could worsen, affecting families, jobs, and communities. On the other side, other senators approached the same data with different interpretations. They raised questions about the costs of proposed measures, potential unintended consequences, and the limits of government authority. In doing so, they weren't necessarily dismissing the concerns raised, but urging caution and deliberation. Their point was that any response needs to be sustainable and not create new problems while trying to solve existing ones. What's intriguing about these exchanges is how they highlight a fundamental tension in public policy: balancing urgency with prudence. On one hand, there's a desire to act swiftly in the face of hardship. On the other, there's a responsibility to ensure that action is well considered and effective. Republicans, Democrats, and independents in the hearing each emphasized different aspects of this tension, reflecting broader philosophical differences about the role of government. At one point, a senator raised a question about historical precedents. This is a strategy we often see in hearings, drawing lessons from the past to inform decisions today. They referenced previous legislative efforts, noting what worked and what didn't. This historical framing can be enlightening because it reminds us that policy isn't created in a vacuum. Decisions made decades ago can influence today's debates, for better or worse. Another notable moment came when a government official was questioned about implementation challenges. This part of the hearing highlighted something that often gets overlooked: the difference between passing a law and putting it into practice. It's one thing to agree on broad goals. It's another thing entirely to translate those goals into action that reaches people on the ground. The official acknowledged obstacles, such as resource limitations and coordination hurdles, which drew reactions from various senators. Some lawmakers sympathized with those challenges, agreeing that implementation is complex and requires time. Others used those admissions as leverage to argue for changes to the original proposals. The back and forth underscored how a hearing isn't just about gathering information. It's also a strategic environment where lawmakers advance their visions for how to move forward. A particularly charged segment occurred when several senators spoke directly about the impact on ordinary Americans. They shared stories from their constituents, stories of struggle, frustration, and hope. These personal accounts, whether they were about accessing services, dealing with financial pressures, or navigating bureaucratic systems, serve to humanize a topic that can otherwise feel abstract. Hearing these stories can remind viewers that public policy isn't just about numbers or debates. It's about people's lives. At the same time, some senators cautioned against letting anecdotes alone drive policy decisions. They argued that while individual experiences are important, they need to be weighed alongside broader evidence. This point of view stresses the need for scalable solutions that help many people, not just a few. It's a debate between empathy and evidence, both of which are valuable, but which sometimes pull discussions in different directions. An expert witness later addressed the potential long-term consequences of various proposals. They discussed projections, economic models, and social trends. Their testimony was rich in detail, and while some of it was technical, the overarching message was clear. Whatever path lawmakers choose will have ripple effects. Benefits in one area could create strains in another. This kind of testimony reinforces the idea that public policy is rarely simple. It involves trade-offs. Lawmakers responded by trying to clarify those trade-offs for the public. Some framed their arguments in terms of opportunity, what gains could be unlocked by bold action. Others framed their concerns in terms of risk, what might be lost if we move too fast or without full consideration. Both sides appeal to principles that many Americans share: hope for improvement and caution against harm. Toward the end of the hearing, we saw some convergence on certain points, though disagreements remained. A few senators from opposing parties found common ground on procedural ideas or areas for further study. These moments, while sometimes brief, are important because they show that even in a polarized environment, collaboration is possible. It doesn't mean complete agreement, but it does mean finding steps that both sides can support. As we reflect on the hearing, it's worth thinking about how it fits into the larger political landscape. Senate hearings serve multiple functions. They gather information, hold officials accountable, and shape public narratives. But they also signal priorities. What issues are lawmakers choosing to focus on? Whose voices are amplified in these discussions? And how do these hearings influence the broader conversation in media and among the public? For ordinary Americans trying to make sense of these events, context matters. It's not just about what one witness said or what one senator argued. It's about understanding the underlying values and assumptions that shape those statements. It's about recognizing that many solutions involve compromise and that most lawmakers are trying to balance competing interests. What struck me most about this particular hearing was the way it brought out fundamental questions about governance. How do we care for vulnerable populations while also fostering economic stability? How do we ensure fairness without stifling innovation? How do we respect individual freedoms while addressing collective challenges? These aren't questions with easy answers, but they're questions worth engaging with thoughtfully. I also noticed that while partisan lines were evident at times, there were moments where the discussion transcended simple party labels. Some lawmakers seemed genuinely interested in learning from the witnesses and adjusting their positions in response to new information. This willingness to listen, even in small doses, is something we need more of in public discourse. Of course, a hearing is only one step in a longer process. After hearings, committees often draft legislation, hold additional markups, and eventually move proposals to the full Senate for debate. Throughout that process, public input, advocacy, and political negotiation all play roles. What we saw in this hearing sets the stage for that larger journey. For viewers watching at home, a key takeaway might be this. It's important to stay informed about these discussions, but it's equally important to think critically about them. Hearings can illuminate issues, but they don't always provide complete pictures. They highlight arguments, but those arguments can be influenced by political strategy as much as by principle. So as you reflect on what you've seen here and in other hearings, consider seeking out multiple sources of information. Listen to expert testimony, read analyses from different perspectives, and pay attention to how policies would affect your community. Civic engagement isn't just about casting a vote. It's about understanding the issues that shape our collective future. Before we wrap up, I want to return to the human element of this hearing. Beyond the charts, statistics, and debates, there were real concerns expressed about people's well-being. Discussions about access to services, economic security, and societal fairness remind us why public policy matters. Whether you agree with the proposals discussed or not, it's worth acknowledging the genuine desire among many participants to address real problems. In closing, I encourage you to think about what you heard in the hearing and what you've heard in this video. What questions do you have? What perspectives do you find compelling? And which ones raise doubts? How do you think lawmakers should balance urgency with careful planning? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please take a moment to share your perspective in the comments below. And let's keep the conversation respectful and thoughtful. If you found this analysis useful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to 45th Perspective. And if you want to support what we do, visit patreon.com/45th Perspective. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to reading your comments.